Welcome to another sporadic installment of I'm Reading House of Leaves, so you don't have to. Today we're covering Chapter 10. Chapter 10 is the story of the attempted rescue of Jed and Wax. Chapter 10 is also a breath of fresh air after the hell that was Chapter 9, and you don't even have to take my word for it. Johnny calls it out himself in the text of the book. Ever since leaving the labyrinth, having had to endure all those convolutions, those incomplete suggestions, the maddening departures, the inconclusive nature of the whole fucking chapter, I've craved space, light, and some kind of clarity. I couldn't agree more with the poor man. And Chapter 10 is, well, it's like meringue. It takes up a lot of space, but there's not much there. Chapter 10 takes up 92 pages of space, but like so much of this book, the page count is a bit of a lie. Almost every page of this chapter is little more than a few lines to a paragraph. The chapter starts with Will, Tom, and Reston heading into the hallway to search for Holloway's team. He packs almost as much camera equipment as he does survival gear. They head in and quickly reach the Great Hall. Holloway and his team are nowhere to be found, so it is determined rather quickly that they're going to have to go down the stairs. The plan is for Will and Tom to descend the staircase, while Reston stays at the top on radio to be able to communicate back and forth between Karen in the house and Will and Tom on the staircase. However, this plan changes abruptly when Tom announces, out of nowhere, that he's not going down the stairs. Will tells Tom that that's okay, he can stay at the top of the staircase with Billy. Billy starts to argue this, saying that he's not letting Will go down the staircase by himself, but Will has already left the two and started heading down the stairs. Will is preparing himself mentally for the trip, knowing that it took Holloway and his team 4 days to reach the bottom. Based on the data they've gathered from Holloway before they lost communication, Will's determination is the staircase is something in the effect of 13 miles long. But within 5 minutes of leaving, the team hears him shouting up at them. Will has reached the bottom of the staircase, just 100 feet down. Tom and Billy can see him waving glow sticks, at which point Billy immediately swings himself out of his wheelchair and starts descending down the staircase himself. It takes about 20 minutes for Billy Reston to get all the way to the bottom of the staircase, after which Will heads back up to retrieve Billy's wheelchair and other supplies. As Will and Billy begin to explore the space at the bottom of the staircase, they notice that all the markers in line that Holloway's team had left have deteriorated, corroded, and they're all falling apart now. Even the multi-strand steel cable is basically rusted away to almost nothing. This despite the fact that the team only left 8 days prior. Navidson takes this evidence to conjecture that nothing brought into the space can last much more than 6 days. Soon, Reston starts to feel sick. When Will asks him if he's okay, he says, yeah, it's more like being seasick. They agree that it's likely from the manipulations of the space, the house growing and shrinking and changing form, just like the staircase that accordioned itself down. Navidson points out that if it decides to expand again, Billy Reston's in big trouble. Reston retorts that with the amount of supplies they brought, Will's in trouble too. Zampano takes a moment now to discuss speculations on why this is. Academics seem to believe that it's because the house reacts to the psychology that the individual or group brings with them. Some critics believe that the house's mutations reflect the psychology of anyone who enters it. Ruby Dahl, in her stupendous study of the space, calls the house on Ash Tree Lane a solipsistic heightener, arguing that the house and the halls and the rooms all become the self, collapsing, expanding, tilting, closing, but always in perfect relation to the mental state of the individual. So it's their belief that the stairway was almost unending for Holloway because he came into the space expecting things that went on forever. But Navidson knows that the stairway has an end because Holloway reached it. Therefore, he knows the stairway to be finite, and therefore, the stairway shrinks and becomes shorter. Or seems to. Meanwhile, Johnny is getting worse and worse, faster and faster. Hearing Haley on the radio really shook him. Now, instead of waking up tired, he wakes up tired and afraid. He says he's suspicious of the dreams he can't remember having. He does visit a doctor who prescribes him a sedative and gives him a referral to a psychologist. However, after paying for the doctor's visit and filling a prescription, Johnny finds that treatment may be financially out of his reach. He says, "As far as I can see, there's no place for me in this country's healthcare system." Ultimately, Johnny chooses not to take the meds. He, in fact, crushes them between his fingers, letting them disintegrate on the floor. After which, he goes through his apartment and destroys, eliminates, dumps, or otherwise gets rid of all other alcohol and drugs he had stored in the house. He says he's working on the hope that getting all of that out of his system may clear his mind and make him feel like a person again. Back with Will and Billy Reston, they start hearing a sound emanating from the space around them, and the two of them immediately head out to search for the source of this sound. At some point, Will is able to get Tom on the radio, where he hears that there's something wrong with Karen before losing signal. Immediately following this, Reston points out that he can hear the cries coming from directly behind the wall that they're next to. The men begin to explore, trying to find a way into that space. Eventually, they find a long hallway filled with doors. After trying several of them, they get to the end where they find a single door without a doorknob that also happens to be locked. This is when they start to hear the whimpering behind the door. Navidson throws himself against the door over and over and over until finally he breaks it open and the door falls off its hinges and onto the floor. Sure enough, as the door breaks loose and falls away, they see Jed's ashen features as he faces what he has come to believe his final moment. Zampano goes on to describe what happens next. Jed's gasp of terror almost instantly transforms itself into laughter and sobs of relief. His sentence has been remitted. He will live. A fraction of a second later, a bullet pierces his upper lip, blasts through his skull, and blows out the back of his head. At this point, we are almost, but not quite, halfway through the page count of the chapter. And this is where it starts to get even weirder. The aftermath of meaning. A lifetime finished between the space of two frames. The dark line where the eye persists in seeing something that was never there to begin with. After this, we get a bizarre account of the shootout between Reston and Holloway on the other side of the hallway. The gunfight ends not with either man being wounded, but with the house itself closing Holloway in through the shutting of dozens and dozens of doors. The hard decision is made to try to save Wax. Reston apparently had part of a two-man tent still in his wheelchair, and he assembles it into a kind of makeshift stretcher. Will attaches one end of the stretcher to Reston's wheelchair and uses straps to hold the other end. They put Wax on the stretcher and start moving out of the space. Shortly thereafter, Will radios up to Tom and tells him to meet them at the bottom of the stairs. This chapter was exciting, fast-moving, and the way the words are spread out makes it feel fast. It's like they literally figured out how to do jump cuts in a novel. The action that happens is short. They enter the room, they go down the stairs, they find Jed and Wax, they deal with Holloway, and they make their escape. It all happens very quickly. And as I said, after the brutal slog that was Chapter 9, it was really refreshing. But it definitely begs the question, what are we in store for in Chapter 11? This book continues to be like nothing I've ever experienced, nothing I've ever read. You could take this story, both stories, the story of Johnny and what he's going through putting the manuscript together and how it's affecting his life, as well as the manuscript itself, which is the story of the Navidson Report, put them in a book in standard format, and it would still be a compelling, very interesting story. But would it be a masterpiece? Would this now 23, 24-year-old book still be prominently displayed on the display tables of bookstores? Obviously, we'll never know. So I hope you enjoyed this chapter and this synopsis and are enjoying the series as a whole. And I hope to see you again for chapter 11. If you are enjoying this, please be sure to click the like button and the subscribe button. Those two things help me immensely in building this channel and getting more of these episodes recorded and out to you. The other way you can support me is by buying my books. Dark White, available in paperback wherever you buy books, and ebook wherever you get your ebooks. And Malcolm Karma Cold Turkey, available as a paperback anywhere you buy books, and exclusively on Kindle for the ebook. And if you're part of Kindle Unlimited, it is available there for free. You can also buy this particular edition, the very cute, smaller dime store special edition that is a mass market paperback size, fits right in your back pocket or in your purse. You can buy that by signing up for my Patreon, even the free tier. And you'll get access to a link that will take you to where you can buy a signed, hand-numbered copy of Malcolm Karma Cold Turkey Dime Store Special Edition. Hope you take a look at that.